Yeah, you can. That is something you can do. It's gonna take some effort, but the good news is I'm gonna help you to get there. So before we get to that, just a quick reminder on the website danishmastery.com. I just uploaded 2 new exclusive videos. So if you want to check that out, you can do that. But I'll talk more about that later. So let's really look at this. Let's take a serious look at how to really get good at Danish, because you've been watching this channel for a while. You've probably been learning Danish for a while, but it's like you're not really getting it good. It's taking a very long time. Maybe you don't understand people, or people don't understand you. Well, the first thing is you need to make sure that you have correct, proper pronunciation. All right. Because if you don't have that, it's very hard for people to understand you. And then they will do that thing where they say, can we just switch to English? They're going to do that. But of course, when you listen to Danish, that is just as important. Because you're watching all these videos, right? My videos and other people's videos. It's great. But the thing is, it's educational content. And a lot of it's kind of slow. It's like very slow pronunciation, like det en god dag I dag. That is very slow. And I guess you like it because it's easy to understand, but you cannot expect to hear that in Denmark, right? So you need to be able to also understand faster Danish. Of course, if you're a beginner, you cannot rush yourself. You got to be a little bit patient. It does take time. But at some point, you got to be like, okay, I've been watching or listening to stuff that's slow for a very long time, and now I gotta get something faster. So at some point you gotta do that. Now on this channel, I made videos that are very slow and kind of slow and a little bit faster and very fast, all kinds of speeds, right? So you can get that. But it is important, because real life is not like an educational video. And people, they mumble in real life, and they don't speak so clearly. So that's one thing. The other thing is you have to become familiar with the silent letters. So if there's like a silent D or a silent G or whatever it might be, you have to be aware. Yeah, that's right. This is Danish, right? Like land, L-A-N-D is land, not land, or land, or something like that. And mulig, I think possible, is not mulig, even though there's a G. Very important. This is the kind of thing that's really boring. Let's be honest, it's not the fun part. But it is the kind of thing that you gotta take care of, because otherwise you're gonna struggle later on. So do due diligence, and it'll be a lot easier later on, because when it's a silent letter or when it's not a silent letter. It's really important. So we always gotta take care of that. And of course there are many steps, there are many things you need to do to get good. It's also that you need to listen to Danish people. Like, how do they actually talk? It's cool that you watch my videos. It's nice that, you have a private teacher maybe, or you go to class, and okay, it's a start. But you also have to be like, okay, out in the real world, in Denmark, or anywhere where there's a lot of Danish people. Can be like, yeah, okay, this is the flow, This is the speed. That's a certain dialect. That's how they make sentences. That's how they say that word. Because very often people, like learners, and this is not just Danish, this is for any language, they're like learning it, and then they get frustrated. They're like, okay, I look at the spelling, and I hear the pronunciation, and they don't match. What the hell? Right? Like, that's how you think, because you want it to make sense. But sometimes that can get in the way, because you think too much, right? And when you think too much, you're making yourself tired. So you can actually save energy by just listening to people, like Danish people. It sounds too easy, but it works. Of course, it's better if you have some kind of translation, or at least a transcript of what they're saying. But even just, eavesdropping, like in public, like, oh, okay, like these, 2 guys on the train, they're talking about whatever, right? And then hear the way, like, back and forth, how the conversation is. It's really, really powerful. And not enough teachers, they talk about this. But I do, because it's really something good that can make a big difference for you. And sort of, together with that advice is you wanna at some point start repeating that flow or that cadence, like the intonation, because yeah, okay, you might have a correct pronunciation, like technically speaking, you're not doing it in a wrong way, but if your accent is very strong and you're saying it in a way that a Danish person never would, then again, you're gonna have that experience where the Danish person is gonna be like, can we just switch like English or something? Like, and they don't do that to be mean, but it's just a matter of saving energy. So you want to be nice to yourself and to them and be like, okay, how can I sound like a Danish person? Now this one is a little bit tricky in terms of internalizing it, because there's not a shortcut. There's not like a hack or like boom, 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 then it's done. No, this one takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time. You gotta listen to many different podcasts, probably, and videos, and you have to consume a lot of Danish, right? So to really get the good flow, you gotta listen. You gotta listen. But don't worry, you can do that. Imagine I'm the doctor. I'm the Danish doctor, and I prescribe to you listen to a ton of Danish. So that's sort of the pronunciation part. There's also something else that's really important, and that important thing is, of course, the grammar. You have to fix the most basic grammar mistakes. So there's a lot. Some are more important than others. And I would say the number one, I also listed it here, is what? Inversion. Yeah. Because it's like no matter who it is or where they're from, they're always gonna make mistakes with inversion. And it's just something I noticed, I've been giving private lessons for almost 11 years now, and many times per week I hear students, making these mistakes. And again, it's okay, but it's like, the rules, why don't you internalize it? It's something about, doing the practices. Inversion is something that I've covered in like 4 videos or something. It's not that complicated, but I understand it takes time getting used to. Regardless, you have to master that. You have to get it down. If you walk around and say, når jeg vågner, jeg ser en film. When I wake up, I see a movie, I watch a movie. Like, don't do that. Right? You know the rules. Like, you probably had them explained to you before, so try to follow those rules. Right? And if it's a matter of you knowing the rules but still not using them correctly, then it's probably because you need to do the exercise more, right? Okay, so that's a big one, of course. But there's also, direct translations from English. This is another one that's very significant. Because again, like a couple of times per week, or more than that, I hear sentences where it's like, yeah, you're not really breaking any rules, but you're saying something that we would never say in Danish. And you're saying something that is unnatural or very stiff. And anything that's idiomatic or a slang term, very colorful, anything that's not literate, or literal, sorry, literate. Anything that's not literal, anything that's a little bit complex and colorful, you probably shouldn't translate directly to Danish. It's gonna sound weird, most of the time anyway, right? So be very careful with that. When you want to say something in Danish, it's better to be like, okay, I have the English colorful expression, like, oh, that's not your business, or, it's 2 birds with 1 stone, something. How can I get back to the core? How can I get back to the essence of what that means? Like the original meaning, and then try to simplify it. And then, of course, you can learn the, same idiom or the sort of equivalent in Danish. But first, just get the basic meaning instead of walking around and saying very strange things. Yeah. Also, you want to think about something like pairs. Could be tror synes, ved kender, laver gør, this type of stuff. Usually you will have a headache with these because, well, goddamn, they mean the same thing in English, right? So that is where you have to think, it's not what they translate as. It's more, what situation do you use them in? Now think about that for a second. It's not what they mean in the dictionary, like the English or whatever translation. It's more what kind of context, situation, what time do you use it at, right? And again, I made videos about that. I made videos about most of these things, so you can just go look them up, right here on the channel or on the website. You can find the videos, so it's not that complicated, but it's something that you have to master. If you walk around saying tror at the wrong time, as soon as at the wrong time, or you still have problems with ved og kender, lave og gøre, so on, når og da, it's gonna hold you back. It's gonna be hard to really get close to Danish people if you're still making those mistakes. So yeah. Then of course there's this whole thing of just prepositions. Now prepositions, I get it, right? It can be tricky. It takes some time, but at least the common mistakes, where you tend to confuse them. Oh, is it for, or is it til, or på, or i? When it's like, again, kind of in pairs. When it's a pair of two words and you don't know which one it is, that's when you really need to consume a lot of Danish. And again, I made videos about this. A lot of på, a lot of i, for, til, af, om, ved. All these prepositions, I covered it. So it's out there. It's not that big a mystery, but if you don't take the time to really master it, you're gonna have a hard time, right? It's funny, if you don't take the time, you're gonna have a hard time, right? You're gonna suffer. So yeah, of course I could say much more about grammar, but this video is sort of more of an overview, like a strategy. It's the approach. It's not just about grammar. So yeah. This one, I call it sentence making shortcuts. And in general, I'm always kind of skeptical with giving people shortcuts. Why? Because human beings, now I sound kind of like a scientist, but human beings are generally lazy. They want to preserve energy, do as little as possible. So if I say like, hey, become fluent in 30 days, oh yeah, that's a lie. It's not going to happen. However, there are certain things you can do to at least get, ahead a little bit faster. Like you can save some time and you can skip some frustration, right? And you can just sound better. So one thing is filler words. Now filler words, of course, you have to understand them, when Danish people use them before you can use them yourself. There's tja, nå, jamen, altså, vel, jo, and many more. These are just the very common ones. And some of them, they can be used in more than one way. So that can take some time to really understand. But that's okay, it's not something you have to rush. The thing is, however, if you don't use them at all, you're gonna sound like a textbook or Duolingo or something made by AI. I'll talk more about that later. But the thing is, it's something that shows Danish people that you're taking it seriously, and you've been in Denmark for a while, you've been studying the language for a while, and you're starting to integrate, the little details, not just the right grammar, like, right verb or right preposition, but also the stuff that's a little more advanced, right? So at some point, it's something you want to look into, filler words. And just because I say filler words, it doesn't mean that they just there to fill out space, okay? They do have meanings, so yeah. Phrasal verbs. Yeah, this one is nice because you can really save some time here. If you have something like gå, that could be a gå til, gå op i, gå om, gå på, noget kommer på. Now, the beautiful thing about this is that they all have different meanings. So you have the basic verb, and then you add different prepositions, and then depending on what preposition you add, you get a new meaning. And what really makes it cool is that you don't have to worry about the verb conjugation because you already know it, right? Then at gå, jeg går, jeg gik, jeg har gået, and so on, right? So then that basic verb you can use with all the different phrasal verbs as long as they have the same stem, the same basic verb. I know it sounds a bit technical, but think about it. Right? That is basically what it is. Phrasal verbs can be quite a shortcut. Right? You don't have to worry so much about the verb conjugation. And it's nice because then you can use the words that you already know. Oh yeah, I know this preposition, I know this verb. Oh wow, when I combine them like this, I get a completely new meaning. Right? Like, that is something that I don't see so many learners really, trying out. But you should really, I would say, spend time doing this, but you should really give it a shot. Then there's the third thing on this list, and that is some of the time that you are learning, studying, trying to master this language. You should also, look up words or vocabulary that you like, that you find interesting. Because of course, there are some things that are just more common than others in my videos and in various language tests and so on. But you also got to keep it interesting for yourself, right? You cannot only do what the teachers tell you to do. If you like astronomy or talking about cheese or whatever, like I'm just looking around my room, mechanics, anything, whatever your interest is, I think it's okay that once in a while, you spend some time also getting that kind of vocabulary. Because it reminds you that, oh yeah, Danish actually covers the stuff that I like. I can talk about the things that I like in Danish, not just talking about work or family or, emergencies or that kind of stuff, right? Like your personality. Like that is when Danish gets really, really interesting, when you can actually talk about the things you care about. If you just talk about the weather or ordering coffee, yeah, of course you think Danish is gonna suck. But if you can talk about things that you really like, it's gonna be a major advantage for you. So yeah, that's also important. And then I would say copy sentences from Danish people. And this is kind of recurring, like I might have already alluded to this a little bit. And what it is, again, you don't always want to be thinking what is the right grammar, okay, right preposition, right adjective, right personal pronoun, yada yada, all that. In the beginning, yeah, you gotta get the grammar down like that. But at some point, just copy us. What did Thomas say? What did I hear, when I was listening to that podcast or that movie, whatever it is, whatever the source, just copy something from your friend, your neighbor, your boss, your partner. You can save some time, right? You really save a lot of time because then you don't have to think from scratch. You just copy what we say. And if your grammar is already solid, then you're like, oh, okay, I can hear, that sentence, like what the different word classes are. Oh yeah, that ends with a verb in the present tense. So I can just put my own verb in there in the present tense, right? Or whatever it might be. So this is something that you can do to really, really save a lot of time. I made some videos about it, but not nearly enough, and that's on me. But this is something that you should also seriously consider and making a part of your toolkit. Now, copy sentences from Danish people. This is not what they say at language school because they want you to obsess over rules and definitions. I'm like, come on. Grammar is the glue that holds it together, but it's not what makes it interesting. Copy from Danish people. That's how you learn. All right, cool. Let's see. Næste. Yeah, useful resources. I could just say sources. It's actually both. So, there are many things. Of course, Danish Mastery is at the top. There's a reason for that. But there are other things. There are many things. The key is also that you consume and you use something that's not educational. The educational aspect is good when we're explaining stuff, like I normally do. But sometimes it's like, how do I learn the Danish that they speak out in the world, or Danish that is not slowed down for me? Something that is, how can I say, it's not spoon feeding and it's more interesting and it's faster. So you can read children's books or children's TV shows, or maybe watch a Disney movie, DreamWorks, whatever, some anime in Danish. Like that is something you can consume. The good thing about something that's made for kids is that usually the pronunciation is going to be clearer. Whereas if you watch some drama, or whatever, something made for adults, it's gonna mumble a little bit. It's like, oh, I'm scared. They don't talk exactly like that, but it is a little bit mumbly, And sometimes, at least if you're in the early stages of learning Danish, it's probably better for you to just, watch or listen to something or read something that's made for kids, right? So content for children. I know that it's a little bit boring, but the structure, the sentence structure is clearer and you learn the basic vocabulary. Another one is audiobooks. Now this one I would say is more when you're intermediate or moving towards advanced, because unless it's for kids, and there are some children's books that are also narrated, so audiobooks basically. But unless it's for kids, most audiobooks, they're gonna be a lot more dense in information or in text. So ideally what you want to do is get an app like Storytel, Mofibo, or whatever equivalent you can find at BookBeat. There's actually quite a few nowadays. You get one of those, and then you listen to it while you read along, because then again you make that connection between spelling and pronunciation. Plus you learn so much vocabulary. And then you're probably thinking, what kind of books, what kind of audiobooks? Now, I would say autobiographies. That's probably the best category you can find. Why? Well, because it's normal people, although they're famous, but it's, human beings just, talking about their lives and all the things they've experienced or thought or regretted or proud of or whatever. And so therefore it's very, very wide. Like it's a lot of vocabulary that you get. Whereas if you watch something about only one topic, sports or I don't know, science or something, very cool stuff for sure. But that kind of stuff is a little more narrow, right? So that's good if you want to specialize. But if you just want to in general increase your vocabulary, then I would say audiobooks that are based on autobiographies. It's very good stuff. Fiction is, now there are many genres of fiction, of course. Fiction is good. It can be very entertaining. It can be a good motivating factor. You know that I make many videos with like these crazy stories that I write. But I would say autobiographies are always better for like overall vocabulary. Because in fiction, the vocabulary is good, but the way they talk is, dramatized, or it's in a ridiculous way, right? Because it has to be entertaining. It's made for Danish people. So if it's just very down to earth and completely plain and normal, it's a little bit boring for Danish people. So therefore, I would say, yeah, there's some fiction that's very good, right? Like if it's very heavy on dialogue. But if it's more like drama or some adventure or something, probably not your best bet. All right, you get the point. You could also listen to a podcast, a TV show, or a movie. Again, there are different things you can watch for different levels. Something that's made for kids is of course going to be easier, but it's also going to be a little more boring. If you are sort of an intermediate learner, you have more things available to you, well, in the sense that you can understand them. If you are not, then just have something to look forward to. Be like, oh yeah, right now Danish is boring because I have to watch these things, that are made for kids, and that's not awesome. But at one point I'm gonna get better. And then I can watch, this cool movie that Thomas had talked about, or this classic that everybody says is really interesting, but, I don't get it yet. And then one day you will get it and use that as motivation. Yeah. Plus you also get to understand the culture better. Like it's kind of hard to understand the culture without the language. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later, but it helps you to understand, the Danish mindset. When you watch something that's made for Danish people, it becomes less mysterious, right? So it's a good way to demystify it. All right, cool. So this one, this is a very important update, because I talked about strategy a couple of years ago, but this one is sort of very relevant in this day and age. You want to avoid something that is stiff or unnatural Danish. Now, first of all, that means you really want to limit, excuse me a second. All right. You want to limit your use of Duolingo and textbooks. Now, they're not the same thing. I'm well aware of that. So let's say Duolingo first. Duolingo is like okay for a beginner. It's fine if you're really, really new. Get some basic sentence structure, but the pronunciation is not very good. And the sentences are kind of random. So it's something that you want to use to get started perhaps. But, don't be fooled, although that's a kind of harsh way of saying it. Just because it's like gamified and there's like a point system and, this annoying bird is like, come on, come back, man. You have a streak. Did you forget that? I don't know if that's the voice of that bird. My point is, Duolingo has some serious limitations and I feel like they don't really care if people are getting good from using it. And that's kind of sad, but, it's a company. So what can you say? Now, textbooks are different. And there are many different kinds of textbooks. They are useful in the sense that you can practice writing stuff. So you have to think a little bit, right? Like it's presented in front of you and it's very structured and there's like a kind of linear approach to it. The thing that's not so good is that a lot of them, they're pretty formal in the language they use. it's pretty dry, and it doesn't really come close to the way we talk in real life. So therefore, if you just learn Danish from textbooks, it's not the best way. Again, there's nothing wrong with it, and who knows, I might also make one at some point, if I find a good reason to. But it shouldn't be your main resource, right? You should really, really be aware of that. And this is very relevant. Stop watching content made by non-natives. So if you go on YouTube or some other social media, anywhere really, you will find stuff that's for learning Danish, could have various names. I don't have to mention anyone. You can, connect the dots yourself. But there are certain, let's say, resources out there that are clearly not made by Danish people. How can you tell? Well, you're going to have some very strange grammar. You're going to have sentences that are nowhere near what Danish people would say. And that is, of course, something you want to stay away from, because if you copy that, you think you're learning from a teacher, but actually you're learning from someone who's not even Danish, and they are producing videos with mistakes in them that they don't even know, like they're not even aware, right? Plus the voices are always AI. Now, I'm not against that. I sometimes use AI in my videos, my own voice or some other Danish person's voice. But the difference is I am Danish, right? And I'm saying that in this kind of stressed way because since they're not Danish, they don't know that their video is crap. They don't know that it's bad quality, right? They're just like, yeah, this is good enough, upload, ka-ching, right? So they don't know when the AI has a strange intonation, when it suddenly has a German or American accent. And it is highly, highly disturbing that it's out there on YouTube and people are watching it. But I'm just giving you a warning. Do not watch that. Stop watching that. Because it's not made by a Danish person. Strange grammar, very unnatural sentences, intonation you would never hear from Danish people, and just overall not worth your time. There is a lot of it, but you know what they say about quality and quantity. Just like you're not going to eat McDonald's every day, I hope. So yeah, that's also important. Now, of course, this whole thing about sounding natural is again, what would Danish people say? And so I'm kind of repeating this point because it's so central to this whole video. And it really is like, how would a Danish person say this? And like you have something in your mind and you want to say it. Now, what are you going to do? Are you going to translate from scratch? Or are you going to ask ChatGPT or Gemini? Probably you shouldn't. It's more like, think about what you have already heard. Like if you have watched hundreds of videos or thousands of hours of Danish, you've consumed it, you should have something in your mind, right? Like even if you don't want to, even if you thought it was boring or not interesting, some of it will stick with you. Like you're not going to forget all of it. So that is why you should think, how would a Danish person say this? When have I heard someone in a similar situation express this idea, this feeling, this whatever sequence of events, right? Think like that. It's gonna take a little bit of effort, for sure, but I will say it's worth it, definitely. And then another thing about AI is that, it's a great tool for sure. It can really make a lot of things easier, but you should only use it to analyze, not generate content. So if you ask it like, hey, can you make this text in Danish about this topic that I'm interested in? Whoops. I wouldn't recommend that because, again, it's going to have some strange sentences. And you, as a learner, you can't know that, right? So if I do it, I'm like, okay, yeah, there's like maybe 7 mistakes in this text, and that's kind of strange, but whatever, I'll just correct it, fine. But if you're learning Danish, then you won't know, and then you will end up sounding like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or Grok or whatever they're called, right? It's good to analyze, but not to generate. If you have something in Danish and you want to know like the grammar or some summary or whatever, and then the summary or the breakdown, the analysis is in English or your own language, that's fine. But it doesn't generate very good content in Danish because Danish is a small language, so it's not trained on a lot of data. That's basically the short explanation. That's the reason behind it. So yeah, be very aware of that. Use AI the smart way. Very cool. And this is sort of the last slide, last major point today, and that is the mindset. This is both a little bit of motivation, but it's also stern voice. And I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but sometimes you need a wake-up call or a little reality check. And the first one is adapt to the language. It will not adapt to you. Now, if you already are the kind of person, and you're adapting and you understand that the language is what it is and you're not complaining, then fine. This advice doesn't apply to you. But I know some learners, they will say, oh, why is it pronounced like that? Why is the grammar like that? And it's like, every language is weird. You cannot find a single language where everybody, trying to learn it will be like, oh, yeah, it's easy. Everything is easy. It's just smooth, No, it's going to be something strange. Like in Japanese, they have the writing system. That was a pain in the ass when I was in Japan, In Spanish, they have like 1 billion verb tenses. In Danish, we just happen to have this mismatch between spelling and pronunciation. Well, it's not really a mismatch, but it looks like that if you're a learner, right? If you're not a native. So I understand your frustration, but don't let the frustration take you over so much that you're complaining and you're kind of resisting that. Why Danish? Come on. It's like, yo dude or yo lady, like it is what it is, And Danish has no obligation to conform to your expectations. Even if it's a small language, it's not like Danish is small, so it has to like obey English, like it's some hierarchy. No, it doesn't work like that. The other one is the more motivational part is remember why you're learning it. Like when you get frustrated, when you're sitting there like, this is not fun, man. I'm giving up. This is no use. I'm not learning this. I'm not even fluent yet. It's like, why did you start learning it to begin with? Maybe it's for love, or maybe it's for money, like to get a job, or maybe it's for your kids, or to understand your ancestors. Sometimes people text me and they're like, yo, Thomas, my great-grandfather, I'm from the US, but he was Danish, and now I want to understand, my roots and all this kind of stuff. Whatever your motivation is, like, remember that. And I know that's kind of the thing that they would say in some self-help video, or self-development, but it's true. If you forget the motivation, then you're just grinding with no purpose, right? You're just like, Danish, I'm learning, I'm supposed to learn. And then suddenly you're like, why am I learning? I forgot. So don't forget, right? Remember why you're learning it. Yeah. Whatever the reason is, doesn't have to be noble or cool. Whatever works for you, right? As long as you feel that it's important. And then, of course, realize that all vocabulary is useful. Now, I have to say that some words are more important than others, obviously. But I want to say that if you discriminate too much, if you're looking at a text and then you're like, okay, I don't need this word, I don't need that word, I only need like these 10 words because, my situation or my preferences, my interest, my whatever tells me that. So, the rest, they can just, I don't need them. That is a mistake, and I can tell you that because, all the students I've had over the years, and I think the number is, I don't really keep track, but let's say maybe 140 or something, in private lessons. The ones who discriminate, they don't learn so fast, right? Because they're thinking, this one, I'm not going to need it. I'm not going to use this, so, just like toss it. It's not important. But even though some is more important than others, it's still useful. And you don't know when it's going to come up. You don't know if like a few weeks later, then it's going to come up and then you're happy that you learned it or you regret that you didn't, right? Because you cannot control the environment you're in, especially if you're in Denmark. You cannot let's say you try to talk to a Danish person and then they say something that you haven't learned and then you're like, this is not fair. I didn't learn this word. They don't care, right? Like they speak just natural Danish. So therefore, you should cover like a lot of topics. You can't decide what you're going to encounter when you're out in the world. And so therefore, everything is useful. Yeah. I see this little typo there. Keep in mind that. Well, anyway, you get the point. So keep in mind that culture and language are connected. I guess this is kind of obvious. What I want to say, like the deeper meaning behind this is that there are some things in the language that are hard to understand if you have not spent enough time in the culture. Like the filler words from before. How to use not in that way. Why does not have so many meanings? Is it just about the intonation? Is it about the context? What about Yemen? Yemen could also be different meanings. Right? I would say, now, is just right? But when you understand the culture a little bit more by spending time in it, or spending time with a Danish person at least, it also becomes easier to learn the language, and vice versa. When you know the language, it's easier to understand the culture. Now, nowadays, if you look online, this is what I do, right, from a sort of native Danish speaker perspective, and it's kind of funny. So I see like, yeah, hygge and coziness and Viking or Viking. It's okay, so that's what we're known for, like coziness and Vikings, right? And it's like the Danish culture is a lot more. Danish culture is being direct, but somehow not showing emotions. It's strange, right? Is a high level of trust, eager to discuss, and like Danish culture is a lot of things, and it's something that like you're gonna feel it's mysterious as long as you're standing on the outside, like you're peeking through the window, right? But it's all foggy or something. You're like, man, what is this? I don't get it, because you need to learn a language while you're also, spending time in the culture. You don't have to become Danish. I'm not one of those people who will say you have to become 100% Danish. That's silly. That's not the goal. But it is possible to learn more. It is possible that you can, get a closer relationship to the Danish language, right? And then also the culture. So yeah, that was like the last one. Like this was a lot of stuff. It's very dense, and I was speaking pretty fast today. So if you need to like rewatch it, that's totally fine, right? Because this is important. This was strategy. All the videos out there. I made almost 600 videos, covered a lot of topics. So it's not like you don't have the resources. I understand. It's not because you don't have resources. It's because you lack focus, right? But a video like this, and hey man, use AI, say AAA, generate, or not generate, but analyze this video and generate like a list of the bullet points. Do that. Why not? To stay focused. So yeah, I believe in your success. I'm not just saying that because it sounds nice, but because I know what works, okay? I can see when a student has done the work and when they are getting better and better. It's very inspiring. Yeah, all right. You know what? Let me just get some water. I talk like a crazy person. So, let's see. And so, like, whatever your current level is, whatever you need, for your Danish, like, I have covered it. Every single topic? Perhaps not, because there's a billion things in this world. But I have covered a lot of things. And just this week, you see, there's this video, Business Danish. So that's a little monologue by an accountant. He's looking at the numbers, the reports, and everything like money is not, as it should be, all that kind of stuff. So that's one. And it's level C1, So if you want to get to the more advanced level, this is what you need. And also this one you see over here, power, influence, global problems and solutions. That's more sort of in a conversational format. Right? I'm talking to myself back and forth. Level P2, upper intermediate. It's also kind of good. Not just kind of good. It's really good. So it's like when you want to get to a higher level, you need this kind of vocabulary. But maybe you're not that advanced. Maybe you're more of a beginner. You're a beginner, but that's okay too. There's a lot of videos on the website. Videos that you don't have on YouTube, right? So you can just go there, and you see right here, this is a little coupon, DK Christmas. You can use that, get 30% off. And anyway, you get a free trial, so why not? Right? There's a lot of stuff, and there's also a lot of bonuses, a lot of things with there's PDF files with grammar breakdowns, and there's an ebook. And there's just a lot of things on the Danish Mastery website. So yeah. But today was indeed like very dense on strategy. I hope that you learn something from that. I hope that you feel motivated, but also that you feel, more focused. That it's about feeling good, but it's also about doing what's necessary, right? It's a little bit of both. Yeah. So that's it. All right. So this was the last live stream this year, and I'm gonna be back next year with more videos. It's going to be great. I have something on the drawing board, and you can look forward to that. So thank you so much for 2025, guys. Thank you for watching and for, just being a part of this whole, community. You can call it that. Yeah. All right. Glædelig jul. Merry Christmas. And I'll see you in the new year. Take care.